This is my penultimate slide, in which I just want to make the point to the viewers that that this case of solar actually revealed where diffusion literature was not paying enough attention to the role of entrepreneurs, the capacities of those entrepreneurs, the learning by doing that they'd experienced and incurred, as well as the resources that they had in terms of funding to effect change, to knock down the barriers to diffusion, and to enable technology like solar to spread. I talk about this framework in detail in my book, and I'd encourage you, if you're interested in applying this framework to other clean tech innovation or other renewable energy innovation, to have a look, because it may provide some suitable clues to your own research. Finally, what are the broader lessons for renewable energy from this example of solar? Now, these are lessons both that are mainly intended for policymakers working in emerging markets, but it's also relevant, I think, beyond the emerging markets. Number one is that entrepreneurs are critical. And policymakers need to be able to see a market like an entrepreneur if they are going to establish suitable policies. We saw the role of entrepreneurs in the case of Indonesia and Sri Lanka and how they were able to quickly affect change in the case of solar. And that applies even broader at the solar manufacturing level, where there's many entrepreneurial companies rather than large companies, large established companies that have led the solar revolution so far. That comes to the second point, that big business is not a panacea. You will often find that policymakers think, oh, as soon as we can get big business into the market, then everything will be fine. Well, actually, small actors like entrepreneurs can move a lot more quickly, and it's demonstrated in the solar space. They often, as well, have better staying power. For example, Shell exited solar in 2006, and many of the entrepreneurs surveyed in selling solar as well as in the industry have still remained in the industry and are still going strong. The third lesson is that really policymakers need to focus on finance. You need to, not only for entrepreneurs who need to be able to secure sufficient equity and debt finance, but customers, fundamentally the users of the technology, need to be able to access long-term finance. And that is something that without finance in the case of solar, it simply would not have spread as quickly as it has done in countries like Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. What also came out of this research is the need to re-energize the World Bank. The World Bank has been tremendously effective. If you read the book, you'll see that they've been very effective in the case of Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and China in encouraging the solar market. But they haven't taken it to the next level. They haven't said, fine, we've established what works and what doesn't. Now we're going to deploy massive amounts of resources to take solar to the next level in these countries. It hasn't happened. The World Bank is not sufficiently mission-driven in this regard, and nor is it sufficiently RE and E focused solely. Today, the World Bank will do as much on coal or oil and gas as it will on renewable energy and energy efficiency. Actually, it does more. Finally, a key lesson that I would like to suggest for policymakers throughout the world vis-a-vis renewable energy is that it's important to act now, not to wait for R&D to encourage lower costs and thereby encourage diffusion that way. There's a prevailing view that, for example, in the solar sector, that as soon as solar reaches grid parity, that it will just automatically diffuse. But I think what we've seen with the crisis lately is that that doesn't happen. Today, there are policies in place that make wind and solar competitive with the alternatives. But because of the crisis, the finance channels shut down over the last 2 years. And even today, there's a lot more hurdles for project developers to get through to get projects online. The key point that I want to make here is it's not just about the cost of the technology, it's about other factors that we've seen at work, especially finance. And whether finance is available will largely determine to what extent the technology diffuses. The same, though, can be said to do with the companies that are there to install and service the technology, to sell it, as well as to the extent to which customers have gotten used to the technology and happy with it. So, again, just as a final point, it is imperative to act now, to use the technologies that we have available today, because if we do that, we will build the market infrastructure, we will build the finance channels, we will get the customer acceptance today, so that when improved innovations come down the pipeline later, those innovations will diffuse faster than would otherwise have been the case.